bent. Nigga, where am I going? Drop the four with my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going? Nigga, I'm in deep like the ocean. I've been in my bag, everybody around me, I'm ghosting. Where am I going? Drop the four in my cup, now I'm floating. I can't feel a thing, to be real, I just go through the motions. Where am I going?
We are going to another episode of HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody for joining in. This is the show that values time and puts God first. So let's get started. So anyone who's listened to me for any amount of time knows that I have this rule. And the rule involves coaches, and the rule involves a handful of players who it's the never doubt club, right? And it's an illustrious group. For the most part, it's primarily contained two guys. That is Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Because I grew up in an era in football where when a team kicks your ass for 20 years straight and they kick the league's ass for 20 years straight, maybe they know what they're doing. And this is with, to take my bias out, Denver had a winning record against Tom Brady up until those last few years. But Tom and Bill were always on my list of guys I'm just never going to doubt. They were so good, so successful, so great for so long. I didn't really care what was going on in the background or what the media said about them. They were in my never doubt club. I have now added one more coach. Anyone who's seen the way that I've talked about these teams or a season preview where I thought this team would be, expectations versus where they are now, this is probably my biggest miss. I thought this team, despite what they had done in the past, had no chance to be above 500, had no chance to be competitive. I thought they were bad at quarterback. I thought they were bad at a lot of offensive positions, even though we've seen some of the talent from skill positions. But to me, it just felt like great defense. Team's going to go nowhere, though. And that is, without further ado, the newest player and or coach to be added to my never doubt list. It's got to be Mike Tomlin. Look, man, you can say what you want, but the reality of what Mike Tomlin is doing in Pittsburgh this year is just incredible. Not just these last two games with Russ, but he got to 4-2 with Justin Fields. Like, they just keep winning games. The most impressive thing about New England for years and years was it was the same team week in, week out. It never changed. It never mattered. Everybody, I've said this a bunch of times, everybody as a fan has seen their team just wake up and do some of the dumbest things I've ever seen a football team do. And you just can't fathom why your team would come so unprepared, so not ready. Like, all these things, it just annoys you 3 or 4 Sundays out of the week. And the Patriots just consistently. And Mike Tomlin has gotten the Steelers toward these last couple years, really this very end of Ben Roethlisberger and to where they are now, where you could say they're clearly not as talented. You could say they're not true Super Bowl contenders because of the lack of that talent. You could say they have issues, deficiencies, etc., etc. You can make up a whole list of reasons, but he keeps pumping out winning seasons. He keeps getting production out of guys. Again, Justin Fields and Russell Wilson last year, these two guys, the most sacked quarterbacks in the league, two maligned quarterbacks. Yes, Fields was liked inside the actual locker room, but did not have the production to match. Russ was a dumpster fire in Denver. And those are the two quarterbacks that Mike Tomlin took, and he said, bet, let's go. And the Steelers right now, where you could argue, have the least amount of you can't even argue offensively, easily offensively have the least amount of talent in their own division, are first place after 8 weeks. They have less talent on offense than the Ravens, less talent than even the Browns, if you want to say their quarterback situation aside, which is also awful, and obviously less talent than what the Bengals do when they have both Chase and Higgins out there. And this guy just does it year after year after year. And I thought this was the year that there was just no way they could do it because of that quarterback situation, because of how I felt about Fields, because of how I felt about Russ. I thought there was no chance that Mike could get this team to be this good, this consistently. And if you think about it, this is the true icing on the cake that really should have let us know. How are you when you're at your best, when life is going good? And how are you when you're at your worst and when life is throwing adversity? The early knock on Tomlin was the Steelers used to be inconsistent. That some weeks they were this team, some weeks they were that team. When they had Ben Roethlisberger, AB, Le'Veon Bell, sometimes they'd go out there and they could score 40 points, defense hold the team to under 10. They were like the best team in the league. And then other weeks, they were erratic. They look unfocused, not buttoned up. Did you just hear the names that I mentioned that were the stars of their team? Do you know how impressive it is to have a team be functional at all when you are employing Le'Veon Bell and Antonio Brown? I have more respect for those teams now and more respect for what Tomlin's done, considering now that we have started to learn some of the personalities that existed in that locker room. We all thought Mike couldn't control anything. I don't know if any coach could have controlled that. I don't know if any coach could have had, a real stable on that locker room without just starting to cut guys. And he was getting to the playoffs with those guys on his roster and those guys as his best and premier players. And when he's really had it all, when he had Ben Roethlisberger, who was ascending into his prime, when he had Santonio Holmes, he had a Hines Ward, he had the great defense, he's won a Super Bowl. Like, what else is there left? I know the standard in Pittsburgh, and I've heard this argument before, and I started to believe it, the standard in Pittsburgh should be we win championships, so let's start getting away from this winning season argument. And I started the season off with, hey, winning seasons sound cool, and non-losing seasons sound cool, except when the first time you have a non-losing season, the first time you don't have a winning season, then all that stuff goes out the window. Because the second you lose, now we're going to start talking about haven't won a Super Bowl in over a decade. Now we're going to start talking about all these issues in the locker room. Now we're going to start discussing all the negatives, because that is a low ceiling, it's a high floor, low ceiling kind of accomplishment. But when you actually look at it in real time, it is beyond incredibly impressive. Like, Mike Tomlin deserves all the praise. Mike Tomlin deserves all the credit. Mike Tomlin is just, again, I only have a handful of guys that have ever made this list, especially in the NFL. There's a handful of guys in the NBA. There's a handful of guys in Major League Baseball. But in the NFL, it's primarily just been Belichick and Brady. And now I'm ready to add Mike Tomlin to the Never Doubt list. We will lead off the show maybe either tomorrow and or whenever the series actually concludes. But I do want to give a shout out and an early congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers for, in my opinion, winning the World Series last night. Look, the New York Yankees are not coming back from down 3-0. I don't think there's enough time for Judge to just totally kick it back into stream and be who he's been during the regular season. Stan's had a great postseason, but it's clearly not enough. Do I think that there's a plausible, and I saw some people mapping this out because you have to create headlines and got to create stories when you're in media, that people said, oh, well, if they could win tonight and then they could win the Garrett Cole start in Game 5, and now it's 3-2 and you put some pressure back onto LA. Well, I agree that is the better for everybody. That is the better way for this series to go. More games, more exciting baseball, create some drama, create some tension. That is for the public how I wish this series would go. And you see a lot of sportscasters who are finally really starting to pick up baseball, who's, again, this has been a really good World Series for baseball. A lot of people are watching, both here and internationally in Japan. And there's a lot of media guys who want this to be a more competitive series because we have a lot of eyes on baseball. But the reality is, the Dodgers are the better team. The Dodgers are now going to be able to play, yes, it's a bullpen game tonight, but it's almost a stress-free bullpen game tonight. It's the kind of game where you don't need everyone to go a perfect inning or a perfect inning and a third because your season is on the line or the series is on the line. No, if a guy gets off to a start, the first guy who comes out or who's the starter in this bullpen game, he could pitch 2 less than stellar innings. And another guy could come out in the 5th inning, he could pitch 2 less than stellar innings because you don't have to win this game. If you're the Dodgers, and again, I think they do win. I think they win in 5. And I think there's a really good chance, honestly, they win tonight. But this is a stress-free bullpen game. Dave Roberts, he's made all the right decisions because they've all worked. There's an argument that Dave Roberts is still a little too bullpen happy. He goes to guys too quickly. But because they've been winning these games, because Freddie Freeman hits the walk-off, because Freddie Freeman's been on fire to help, and he's been the World Series MVP by a mile, helped them get this 3-0 lead. That's why it feels like Dave Roberts has made all the correct decisions, but there's still a lot of things that could potentially go wrong. But the way they're swinging the bats right now, Freeman, Betts, Ohtani hasn't even had really a great game. I still expect him potentially tonight to finally have that breakout game. The Dodgers, again, I said this yesterday, whoever wins game 3, if the Yankees could actually push out the series to get to 6-7 games, that was going to help them win. And if the Dodgers could do the knockout punch 3-0, and to me, that felt last night like the knockout punch. Essentially 4-0, a home run with 2 outs in the 9th inning. And David Ortiz said this, I want to emphasize this. You can tell when something is genuine. There's a lot of sports rants that go viral. There's a lot of rants in general that go viral. I don't think what David Ortiz did last night was a rant. When David Ortiz called out the energy of the Yankees pregame, during the game, the fans, the crowd, like a lot of that stuff does matter. You know, it's one thing, the players are already super tense. These guys make millions upon millions of dollars, have $100 million contracts. Juan Soto's trying to play for maybe the biggest contract in MLB history. They're in the World Series. They know the way sports media works, which is if they play well, they're a hero. They talk about them like a legend. And if they don't play well, Aaron Judge, they're going to be talked about as if they should be in the minor leagues. But the fans can't have that kind of energy. The fans need to be energetic, excited, screaming, shouting, regardless of the score from the first inning. That's where a lot of these guys, especially role players, are going to get that energy. You're going to be able to help loosen up. And David Ortiz, who's been in these situations, he's won World Series, he's been a part of these pennant runs. It wasn't so much let me crap on the Yankees because, I'm a Red Sox legend. It felt genuine. It felt like he was truly trying to express, hey, all these things this team is trying to do, the fans are a part of that, and we need the fans to be a bigger part of that and do their contribution, which is bring the energy, bring the excitement, doing all this stuff. And it just didn't feel like they were doing that. And so, again, a lot of rants go viral, a lot of these big, heated, get angry, blah, blah, blah. But what David Ortiz said, while it did go in its own sense viral, and people are now talking about the energy of the Yankee fans, that is something I want to see tonight. Are they going to be more energetic? Are they going to be more lively? Are they going to be involved in the game even though they're down 3-0? Or are they just going to look like how they looked in game 3, which was lethargic, not really that. Like, they looked more tense than the players, and there's never a reason for fans to look more tense than the players. You are there to enjoy the game. You are there to observe. Let the players who make all the money and who are going to face the criticism, let them be tense, and it's your job to help loosen them up. So, love what David Ortiz said. Again, I think the Dodgers delivered the knockout punch last night. They're up 3-0. I'm here for the hate watching of the Yankees, so I'm glad they're down 3-0. I think for the betterment of the sport, the Yankees need to come back and make it a series, but I realistically think this ends tonight, and then we'll end tomorrow crowning the Dodgers World Series champions. Oh man, a lot to get to today. So, Tony is going to stop by. We didn't have him yesterday. He normally stops by on Mondays. He is going to stop by later today. Also, how come organizations just don't, like, they decide to do something, and then the second it doesn't look right, they just have, why do they have no convictions? They just keep changing and being wishy-washy. We'll discuss more after the break. This is HardFoul Radio. I don't care if the Vikings are 5-0. This is a 1,000% to me. This is a coaching story. This is Kevin O'Connell. This is Brian Flores. This is a really cool story for Sam Darnold, but it's still Sam Darnold. And I'm just not willing to put them much higher than this because I think the 7th best team in the NFL is probably your cap with Sam Darnold. Now, that's still incredible. Everything they've done to Minnesota this year has been absolutely, without question, incredible. But it's Sam Darnold. And with that, we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. I listened to Dave Ramsey for, especially when I was younger, getting out of debt and financial advice. And one of the things Dave says is not to just copyright, but he says at the time, he's like, kids do what feels good, adults devise a plan and stick to it. And I'm not here to take his material, but it's just, I firmly believe this. And how come with NFL organizations or pro sports teams in general, how comes it feels like they never really do this? They decide, especially when it comes to drafting a guy. We've seen, this is the year of all years. We've seen Sam Darnold be reborn essentially in his sports career. We've seen what Geno Smith has done the last couple of years. Baker Mayfield in Tampa. These guys who were drafted somewhere, situation wasn't good, talent wasn't enough, and they are now all having career-esque years and career-esque moments in these new situations. So, Anthony Richardson got benched today, and I don't understand it. And I'm not here to defend the people that say Anthony Richardson doesn't play well, Anthony Richardson, look at his stats. And I'm not even here really on the same side as the guys who say, oh, well, his film actually looks way better than what his numbers look like. I'm not here to tell you how his film looks. I'm not here to tell you what his stats are. I'm here to go with common sense. Again, adults devise a plan and they stick to it. If you were the Indianapolis Colts and I was pro this move, go back and listen. Draft Anthony Richardson because your reality of an AFC team is you have a bunch of aliens in the conference. Mahomes, Herbert, Lamar, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen, Aaron Rodgers got traded there, even though obviously he declined. CJ Stroud is now here. And at the time, even when they drafted him, Trevor Lawrence coming off a playoff berth. There was a bunch of really good, for the most part, young elite quarterbacks in the AFC. So if you were going to compete, I was pro take the guy with a lot of talent, a lot of upside, who could potentially turn into one of those aliens or superstars in the AFC. But that's knowing he is a project. That's knowing he is going to take some time. That's knowing he's not just going to be great right off the bat. It's going to take coaching. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of stuff. This is not this is throw it in the oven, let it bake. It takes time. This isn't, put it in the air fryer and boom, it comes out 10 minutes later and it's done. But we had just seen the New England Patriots with Mac Jones, who took a quarterback who was basically ready to play, but we had already seen the best of him. He came into the league, that's how good he was, he never got any better, and that wasn't good enough long term. So I was pro take the guy who has a lot of upside, a lot of potential. But then why did you only give him 10 starts? He got injured last year, so he didn't really have a real rookie season. This is essentially his rookie year. And yeah, he's messing up. He's making some mistakes. He doesn't have a great completion percentage. And was the look of, I took myself out the game because I was tired, was that a bad look? Fine. He's young 20s. Does his leadership, I know Dak's leadership was celebrated a decade ago when he broke into the NFL, but are we expecting this guy's leadership to be that? Dak's whole reason that he was celebrated and thought any more than just a B quarterback was because of his leadership, because it was so crazy for that age of an NFL player. This guy's in his young 20s. He's raw, but the arm strength is there. The speed is there. He got hurt already. He's going to make mistakes because he's essentially a rookie. And again, you, as the Indianapolis Colts, drafted him with the knowledge of he was a project quarterback. He was not going to be ready to go day one. He was not going to be a completed product day 5. You had a plan. Stick to it. What good does it do you to win a few more regular season games this year with an old Joe Flacco than to find out really what you have in Anthony Richardson if you give him the full season worth of starts? And then if you think you really have something, even if you don't win that many games, you go and pair him with another top 10 pick. What does playing Joe Flacco going to do except maybe the way your season's going, you'll win a 6th game instead of 5 games or a 7th game instead of 6 games? I like Joe. Joe's a cool story. The fact he can still play it all at his age. It's fun. Flacco's still out there in 2024 throwing it around. I know he still had some good games. He had a good game for you early this year. But Joe Flacco was not your future. And again, you drafted the project quarterback. What was your plan when you drafted him? That you thought he was just going to be great day one? Well, if he was great day one and he had the kind of skill set that he had, he wouldn't have been available at 4. He would have been the first pick in the draft. He would have been a generational prospect. Like, again, I'm not here to defend Anthony Richardson. I'm not here to say he's going to be a great quarterback. Yes, I defend that I'm defending the Colts in some ways because I would have still taken Richardson the same way they did a year ago. But after him getting hurt, not having enough game time reps, and everyone's talking about how many games he gets, it's the same thing with Trey Lance. And I ripped the 49ers and they did this. And it worked out for the 49ers because they lucked into Brock Purdy, who at least was a young quarterback. Joe Flacco is not a young quarterback. You're not lucking into Joe Flacco. The Browns lucked into Joe Flacco because they had a team ready to compete. They felt like they were there, and they had a quarterback situation that was awful, but also to their own. They did it to themselves, and Joe Flacco got them to the playoffs. Joe Flacco's not getting this Colts team to the playoffs. This Colts team is not what that Browns defense was last year. This Colts team isn't what that Browns roster was last year. This Colts team needs to gel. This Colts team needs to play together. And Anthony Richardson needs the reps. Otherwise, he'll never play. Again, I ripped the 49ers into Trey Lance, but they lucked into a young quarterback. The Colts aren't lucking into a young quarterback. You drafted the project guy. Stick to the plan. Be an adult. I just don't get it. Again, I'm not here to tell you Anthony Richardson's going to be fantastic. And they might be, in the grand scheme of things, they might be proven right because Anthony Richardson might not ever turn into the player that people think he can be. But at least give him a chance, right? Like, am I crazy? And with that, we are joined by the richest man y'all never meet. Tony is in the building. How you doing this week, man?
What's up, man? I'm good.
So we're going to get into the game, obviously, because teams play each other. But I want to ask, so you've been far more critical of John Harbaugh than I have been in the past. I even yesterday said for my hard left thing, I got the most wrong the prior week, is I said, look, I'm going to stop defending John Harbaugh until proven otherwise. Because, yes, he's in that weird gray area for me where it's like, and I felt this way about Sean Payton coming into the season, watching the early game. There wasn't a lot of great early games going on. But it's the Derrick Henry 4th down run. The most effective play in football the entire year has been Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, RPO.
Right.
And to just take Lamar out of that play, not saying you can't do a direct snap to Derrick Henry at any point during the season and that you might feel like you have such a dominating matchup up front, it doesn't matter. But you have statistically the most effective play in football, and you just willingly remove half of it. That I lost my mind in real time. And as being a fan of any team, we've all seen coaches, managers do things that drive us crazy. That, to me, was maybe the worst coaching call I've seen in a minute. And so you've been far more critical of them. What was Sunday like? Obviously, them coming off probably that or the Raiders game, if you want to say their worst loss of the season.
When I texted you this yesterday, I believe it was, like, after that direct snap play, the fan base for the most part knew the type of game it was. If not, knew they weren't going to win the game because it's the same thing every time. And for me, I come into this season and just knowing that as long as John Harbaugh is the coach, the Ravens are going to have about 3 to 4 just dumb losses every season because You go back to last year, they lose to the Browns at home after being up multiple scores in the second half. Lose to Colts in that stupid rain game. They lose to the Steelers in just a game that they controlled all the way through. So you kind of know that, okay, the Ravens are going to have about 3 or 4 of these per year. Some may say 2. I tend to lean on 3 or 4 because most of the Ravens' losses, unless they've clinched a playoff spot going into the final week of the season, most of the Ravens' losses are just losses that shouldn't happen. Most of the Ravens' losses are just things that like is very avoidable. So I look at it from that standpoint. It's one of those things. Why I say what I say coming into the season is that I didn't pick the Ravens to go to the Super Bowl this year because I don't think that when it comes down to it, John Harbaugh can beat Andy Reid. I think that whether he has the more talented team or not, which more times than not he does have, he's playing mental gymnastics with himself in a way that's just so unnecessary as a head coach, and in a way that the Tomlins aren't going to do when they play him, in a way that the Andy Reids aren't going to do when they play him. And a lot of times, beating Pittsburgh or beating the Chiefs is going to decide where you're at from a playoff positioning standpoint and where you're at from the ability to go to the Super Bowl or not. And I just knew when they come out that first drive, because the Browns defer and the Ravens get the ball, it's set up so great for you to go out and put points up early, put pressure on Jameis Winston in his first start in years, and really force them to kind of adjust. Let them know that it's going to be a long day trying to stop this offense. Lamar came out, they drove right down the field, got into the red zone in a snap. 4th and 1, obviously you're going to go for it. No one's debating that. No one has a problem with that. To take who I think right now is the best quarterback and best player in the league, to take him completely out of the equation and give the defense what you're going to do, just give it up to him. Just give it to the Browns defense, who have one of the best home defenses in the league. To just give them the playbook right there, it let me know, okay, this is going. And I tweeted out, if you go back and look at my tweet, I said this is going to be one of those Harbaugh and Monken games where everything's just got to be the cutest thing. Everything's got to just be the most complicated and overthought out thing. And credit to Tom Monken, he called a relatively good game. It wasn't one of his best by far, but he called a relatively good game. But John Harbaugh just does not elicit a confidence that you need to get through those situations. And one more thing I'll say before you continue is that Lamar has, after this year, he'll have 3 years left on his contract. I personally think this is John Harbaugh's last year, win or lose with the Ravens. That's what I think. But if it is not, for whatever reason, because I think I want to say he has one more year on the contract after this. I could be wrong. This could be the last year of the contract. But if they go into a situation where they haven't won the Super Bowl, it's the only thing Lamar wants, and he's still the coach, the idea that Lamar won't leave is something that they can't fuck around with. And I would hope that the top brass gets that.
No, 1,000%. I think about this is so the Lions did something that I wasn't actually sure was possible anymore in 2024, which is score 50 points and your quarterback. They almost scored as many points as Jared Goff had yards. Like, it was insane. But I thought about that later in the day. I was like, if the Ravens and the Lions switched coaches, and neither of them are play callers, so they're both, it's culture / manager type guys between Campbell and Harbaugh. I firmly believe the Ravens would be 7-1 at worst. Like, I think they are more talented, and I think the Lions have, in my opinion, the most talented roster in the league. But even then, I don't think the Ravens are that far off. If anything, maybe it's just an age thing, because the Lions, a lot of their young talent is just extremely young, even with the Hutchinson injury. It's like, is that the kind of coach? Like, if you were to replace John Harbaugh, what's the direction you need to go? Another manager type coach, or do you go get a offensive defensive play caller type coach?
I think that the plan, this is just my opinion and how I just kind of think it all out. I think that the plan coming into the season was to see how everything goes with Zach Orr and he's the head coach in waiting because you don't really want to miss out on like the next young guy like you did with Mike. And the Mike situation was always going to go that way unless they promised him that he would be the next coach, which I don't think they did. And a lot of that is just the ego of John Harbaugh. I don't really have a necessarily a idea of like what they should do if he's not the coach or if they, go offensive, go defensive. Like it just has to be someone new. And not new for the sake of just getting another 50-year-old in there or some shit or Todd Monken takes over or something like that. Like it needs to be a new energy. Someone with a totally different vision and idea of what they want football to look like, number one, and what they want this team to be. You mentioned Dan Campbell. And the thing, I also text you, I'll put that up in here, is that because John Harbaugh didn't play football on like a college level in like a big way or in the pro level like Jim, he has this thing with him where he has to just be so smart. He's not an X's and O's guy. He's not a coordinator guy at this level. I'm sure he's done that at a lower level previously with his experience, but he wasn't a big defensive coordinator when they hired him. He wasn't a big offensive coordinator when they hired him. He wasn't like a top, assistant head coach. He was a special teams coordinator that they thought was the right guy. He comes from a football family, talked football in a way that they liked, and he got the job. And us as Ravens fans, in hindsight, are very grateful for that, because it could have been Rex, it could have been Jason Garrett. Jesus Christ, thank God it wasn't Jason Garrett. So it's like it's one of those things where it's not that he's not appreciated for what he's done, but
time's run its course.
It's run its course, and it hasn't run its course in a way where it's like, Mike Tomlin. I'm sure he gets his shit from Pittsburgh fans. I'm not talking to Pittsburgh fans to see how they feel about Mike Tomlin, but it's if you are still a fan that feels like, hey, Mike's time has run its course here. We just think it's time for something different because we have bigger expectations. That's fine. But you can never blame Mike Tomlin for not coaching to what he has. And he's gotten more out of what he has. Whereas with John Harbaugh, he's getting less. The Ravens went to their first AFC Championship game with Lamar last year. That shouldn't be the case. I'll give a mulligan for 22 and 21 because of the injury situation to 8. That's super fair.
Oh, yeah, no, that's fine.
2020, they were not properly equipped to be there. And that is not only just on the roster itself, but it's also on the coaching. And when you look at 2020 and games that they lost, they should have won, it speaks to coaching. They blew a double-digit lead to the Titans that season at home, I remember. They blew Pittsburgh. They blew leads to the Steelers in 2020, I remember. These things take you from being able to win the division to being a goddamn wild card and having to go on the road instead of getting a home playoff game. You're making the road tougher. And obviously everybody knows what happened in 2019. The Titans lost when you were just, not prepared in the way you should have been. When you had ran through the league, obviously, it was everything is situational, obviously, but you gotta find a way to win those games. And I just think it's time. And I don't say that to say I think John Harbaugh is just a shitty coach. I don't think he can get the job done on the pro level or anything like that. But it's just with this team, the timeline that you have for this team, the clock that you're on for this team, you can't just sit around and wait.
No, I agree. When you have, and it's so quick. It's like the worst experience you get as like a fan of, especially in the NFL, is that first time you get to see like a great amount of talent on your team, and you think, oh, this is it forever. And then you really do realize, even that 2019 team you talked about, I think that was because that was Lamar's first MVP year, right?
Right.
Yeah, and so it's like if you look at that roster, and we're only 5 years apart, you would know better than I did. There's only a handful of guys who are even from that roster just 5 years ago that are still on this roster, and guys aren't the same players anymore. So, not to spend too much time on this, but of course, got to acknowledge it. So, Broncos Ravens play this week. The schedule makers just hate the Broncos. I'm convinced. They just thought that schedule makers thought Denver was going to be horrible this year. Cool, which is why they can't even flex out. We got the A1 CBS crew, so it's like Romo, Nance, and them, but they can't even flex it to a primetime game because the Ravens and Chiefs already have too many primetime games under the CBA. And even though Denver's only got one, and even though I went on a rant about this yesterday about like the NFL just needs to change their flex schedule because it should be okay after a handful of weeks. Like Cleveland, I think they have that's Cleveland has another primetime game. It's against the Broncos. Denver, Cleveland shouldn't be on Monday Night Football. Like at a certain point, after about week 7 or 8, when you just know the teams that are truly bad, like you should just be able to flex out their games. But I do think it is going to be interesting.
What's the 425 game?
Good question. I was focused on the early part. I want to say it's the Chiefs, but I could be wrong.
Most likely, because if they're not moving, if it would have to be Mahomes for them to not move it out.
Oh, week 9.
It is. Is that not a 425 game? Or I'm just not going to get the 425. So that's not even a big 425 game. So it's like I don't know why they couldn't just switch that
they
out.
got Lions. Oh, Lions Packers.
But that's Fox.
Oh, that's Fox. Yeah.
No,
There's not even.
Our things play on CBS, so it's like I don't even know why.
Yeah, it's insane. They need to play again. We've had to watch as a community of football fans. We've had to watch the Giants in primetime 2 of the last 3 weeks. I don't think the world deserves that. And I'm fair. When Russ was stinking it up in Denver that year, and like that Colts game and the Niners game, like I said, take them off TV. I'm okay with it. I don't need everybody else seeing how fucking bad they are at this point in time. But I do think it's going to be interesting because, like, yes, the Ravens have more talent. I'm not here to argue that. But I do think it'll be a good display of coaching because, I think Peyton and Joseph have done as good a job as anyone. I think right now, if you said coaching combinations this year, to me, you got to give Reed Spagnuolo partially because of reputation, what O'Connell and Flores are doing in Minnesota. And then I think Sean and Vance are right behind them as far as total coaching combination, what they're doing. Even if Sean wants to trade everybody every other fucking play. Do you have, and again, Denver's got to play at the Ravens and then at Kansas City. So it's like wonderful. What a fucking finally have some momentum, finally feeling good. And it's like, hey, yo, you want like, besides maybe like a Detroit thrown in there, it's like talk about the most fucked up back-to-back games you can play. What is your, and see, John Harbaugh pissed me off too. This is really why I ended up on hard left because I would have felt better if the Ravens were on a 6-game winning streak because then at least you open up the door to like, all right, maybe we're going to be the game they slip up on. No, now they slipped up last week and now I got to deal with a pissed off Derrick Henry. And it's probably, what's the temperature like in Baltimore right now?
It's weird. It's getting colder though. It is
all right, colder. So it's getting colder. Derrick Henry's going to be pissed off. Bro, I got to, anyway. How do you feel going into the game?
Going into it, I probably feel the same way I would have felt had they won. It's like this defense isn't in a good space now. I still, with everything going on, I still think the defense will be fine. Like they dropped 3 to 4 interceptions Sunday. A lot of Ravens people that I do respect, like film things or just different things. They talk about how the Ravens defense, and this is from Spencer Schultz, Ravens for Dummies on Twitter. He's big in that the Ravens defense is very overcomplicated right now, and they're still doing a lot of disguising and a lot of like sim pressures and all of that type of shit. And it's fine to do, but it can't be the main thing that you do when you got so many new pieces on the defensive side. And that's a great point because I do think that in simpling, if they just dumbed down the defense and made it, hey, your guys are going to have to beat our guys. If they just kind of broke it down to the bare bones and made it 1-2-1-2, it would be much easier because all you see a lot of times before the Ravens are giving up these chunk throws or these big first downs or these big plays, it's a lot of hands in the air. Where am I supposed to be? Where am I supposed to be? And you have Roquan trying to get everything organized, and by the time he's able to, it's just too late. The Ravens over the last few games, going to the Bucs and Cleveland, They've given up a ton of first downs to running backs out the backfield on wheel routes, shit like that. Guys kind of sneaking out and the defense not reacting quick enough or not being able to react quick enough. Or big plays deep like the Cedric Tillman game winner because motherfuckers are out of rotation, they're out of space. And lastly, John Harbaugh cannot. You can't have Marcus Williams on the bench when you can't have Marcus Williams on the bench where you're down your two of your top three corners. Marcus Williams has not played really good football this year. That's probably more due to scheme than it is just his inability because I think he's still a really good safety. But he can't be on the bench. And Eddie Jackson was put in a shitty situation last Sunday. He didn't play well for sure. He dropped picks. He blew coverages, all of that. Like, I'm not here to fucking say Eddie Jackson could have played better. He just didn't play better. But he shouldn't have been in that situation. Marcus Williams is paid a lot of money to be the free safety of the Ravens, and to not even give him that chance was just, it's an ego thing that is going to kill this team.
No, it's gonna be interesting because I'm glad you brought up that point because.
And also sorry, but about the game, I feel the Ravens can go out there Sunday, win by 20. They can be in a dogfight, and Bo Nix could look like a Hall of Famer. I tend to lean on the latter. Actually, knowing my luck, that he'll go out there and have a really good game. I'm kind of expecting that. So it is what it is. But they got to get better. They got Deontay Johnson. I'm assuming he'll play Sunday because it's Tuesday. They start practice tomorrow, so he should be in the building by tomorrow. So, but yeah, they just got to clean things up defensively. Catch the fucking football when the other team's quarterback throws it to you, and run the ball. Run the football.
No, it's I'm glad you bring up the complexity point because Denver's defense, and Brian Baldinger's been doing some breakdowns on this too. It's like, excuse me, he's like, oh, everyone thinks like, because most people only really watch 1-2 teams max, like intentionally, where you're like watching pretty much every single play, every single game. And he's like, yeah, I was expecting because the defense is so drastically different from last year to this year, which again, if you're not watching every single game, Denver's defense statistically was not awful last year if you remove the Miami game. Was the Miami game a game from hell? 1,000%. But 70 points in one game fucks up your averages for the whole year. Trust me. Also fucks up your Sunday really, really badly.
Very quick, I'd imagine.
But it's a lot of what Denver's doing is they're just putting trust in the fact of they believe, and statistically been proven right, they have the best set of corners in the game between Surtain, Moss, and McMillan, and just basically like Vance Joseph is literally running in Gauge 8. And it's wild to see in real time because I'm like, hey, yo, someone's going to trip. Like, someone's going to give like that one play, and there's when Denver's been beat, it's because the receiver gets open for 15, 20 yards. It's why the Charger game was so frustrating because the Chargers just saw that and did max protection. So it's like, yeah, Engage 8 don't work against that. But Denver's defense, really simple. They say, yo, PS2 over here, Riley Moss here, McMillan here. Everybody else, it's just a free-for-all at the quarterback. Two quick things before I get you out of here. The World Series, I do got to give baseball some props. They are doing numbers. Ratings came in, game one, highest rated World Series game in 7 years. Again, we discussed this a little bit last week or the week prior, where it's like baseball's got to do it. Like, if you can't do it with this Dodgers team, this Yankees team, especially because depending on what Soto does in the offseason, like, you might not have this amount of stars, guys making $100+ million a year ever again. And if you throw in the Japanese numbers, which obviously Yamamoto and Shohei are a big part of that, like they're tuning in to the tune of 17, 18 million a year. So want to get
the numbers should be big off the hate watches alone.
That's what I said. I'm like, you have the two brands that people love to hate. I live in a city where people just can't stand the Dodgers. So it's, yo, fuck the Dodgers. They beat the Padres early this postseason. Nah, fuck them. We don't want to see them win. And New York, it's easy to hate. I've been hate watching, having a great time. Your thoughts really quick. Obviously I think right now Freddie Freeman's got to be World Series MVP. And baseball finds a way to do this weird shit. The Kurt Gibson home run and his home run both happened at 8:37 while they were limping on one leg. So
The
Shout
best
out,
sport ever. It's the
shout out to
best sport
baseball,
ever.
man. Like, I don't know how
It's
y'all
the
did that,
best
but
sport ever.
you did it. Oh, yeah, your reaction on the World Series so far, Yankees down 3-0.
It's beautiful. It is beautiful to see. Aaron Judge just being the Aaron Judge being dog shit in this spot. It's like Judge be dog shit in the ALDS. I've seen him be dog shit in the ALCS. I've seen him be dog shit in the wild card round. To be dog shit in the World Series, oh man, you can't write this. You can't write this stuff.
No, that's some good shit. Yeah, shout out to baseball for the numbers. Uh, Last thing here, I was inclined to think so. The WNBA, for people that haven't been paying attention, it's like your coaching job is just not safe. We're up to 9
At
coaches
all.
now that
At
have been
all.
fired since, like, if you want to go, I think one of them was like the end of the regular season until now. This point, we've had 9 coaches change over. I originally thought, and I do think this is good sports wise moving forward. I understand the Fever getting rid of their coach, and I even, as much as I love her, I even understood the Chicago Sky doing it because in my mind, I could at least justify, okay, we have one of the most marketable new stars in the league. We think we're about to get
It's the how can I put it? It's the like how volatile the vitality. I think that's the right word to use. It's how volatile the W is, and this is why before this season, like motherfuckers came at a lot of the women because of how they came at Caitlyn, and it's just like that's just the nature of this game. You're fighting for your life. Like there's thankfully, thank God there's expansion coming. More jobs will be open. More money is
Mhm.
going to come into the W in a few years. These are all beautiful things, but for the last 20 years, this has been a sport. This has been a game, a league where you're fighting for your life every game. You're fighting for your job and you're coaching for your job. Because unless you win the championship, your job is on the line. There's probably 3 coaches whose jobs aren't on the line in the W, and that's Cheryl Reeve, that's Sandy Brondello, and that's God damn it. The Aces. Fuck.
Oh,
Becky,
Becky, yeah,
um, Becky, Jesus
Hammond,
Christ,
right? No,
Hammond.
yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
it's so much going on.
yeah, yeah.
Becky Hammond. Like there's 3 coaches whose job is on the line. Other than that, your job is on the line. Stephanie White took the Sun, not the Sun, but the Connecticut Sun. They went to essentially the conference finals this year. They were in the finals about two or 3 seasons ago. Like it's tough in the W, and this shit is par for the course. You just got to kind of roll with the punches and take it how it goes because these things change. Now, hopefully, in a few years, this isn't the norm, but
Hmm.
it's still a growing league. These women are still battling, every season to not only keep jobs, but to just keep job security, whether you're a player or a coach.
No, yeah, man, it's been crazy. Appreciate you as always for stopping by. I ain't seen nobody on Twitter ask me, yo, check Bo Nick's first half stats this week. It was wild. I swear, like y'all was checking so hard a few weeks ago. I thought I didn't see
Who the
nobody on
fuck
Twitter. I ain't
would
seen no
recommend looking for Bo Nix's first half stats against the Panthers,
man. Look, everybody else got to be. I saw everybody celebrating Caleb threw 4 touchdowns again. Everybody celebrated when he got hurt, but Jaden was fucking him up, man. I just saw a lot of people nuts. Hey, man, look, I'm gonna take my victories raw and get them. And I appreciate you as always stopping by, though, bro.
Appreciate it, man.
prime time standalone games. And while the London games are a little weird because they're not quite as prime time because not everybody gets up that early, especially for on the West Coast. It's up at 6:30 in the morning. So it's not quite as big as a Sunday night football, a Monday night football, these other primetime games. Unless you happen to coach for the one team whose owner is an ambassador overseas for the NFL, and your team comes out and looks, while the final score may not be indicative of it, did not play well, your quarterback looks old, threw 3 interceptions, and while your defense did actually do a pretty good job against the Minnesota Vikings, not winning that game, again, when your owner is the ambassador for the NFL overseas, you're Robert Saleh, that's the kind of game that gets you fired. And we are back. This is HardFoul Radio. Appreciate everybody as always. We all know narratives, right? Some are legitimate, some are genuine, some are pulled right out of your ass. Some are earned, some are given. I've talked about this a lot this year where especially in football, it feels like where a guy is drafted in our pre-draft position or thoughts about him impacts a lot of what he does and how we feel about him when he's actually on the field. I root for a team where this is pretty much the standard for Bo Nix. It does not matter where if Bo was bad in your mind coming into the NFL, it doesn't matter what he's done, he's still just bad in your mind. I was watching FS1 and I was watching Mahomes Mountain, and I thought, well, of course Bo Nix has to move up. He just had 4 touchdowns and nada. So, with that being said, you can think what you want about Bo Nix, and you can think what you want about Sean Payton, both who have been fairly or unfairly a large amount of criticism the last year, and for Sean a year and a half. But if you want to talk about a narrative that can be earned, by the way, this is a part of our Team Tuesday, a narrative that can truly be earned, the Denver Broncos have arguably the toughest 2-game stretch in the NFL coming up the next 2 weeks. I've been tweeting for the last several weeks the Denver Broncos post the Charger game. I said the Denver Broncos will be 6-4. The Denver Broncos will be 6-4. That meant they had to beat Carolina. Or sorry, at the time they had to beat the Saints. They had to beat the Panthers, both of which I thought were easy games. Then they had to beat one of either the Ravens in Baltimore or the Chiefs in Kansas City. And I'm here to tell you, if they get one of those games, we will start to get some true conversation about Coach of the Year and Rookie of the Year for Sean Payton and Bo Nix. We will overtake the conversation if they somehow win both of those games. Could you imagine the Denver Broncos on a 4-game win streak beating Baltimore and Kansas City both in their home? Can you talk about maybe the most impressive set of wins that any team is going to be able to present by the time the season is over? Man, I just got excited thinking about it. Woo! Yes. Again, you have to earn this narrative. You have to earn this reputation. Going into Baltimore and playing Baltimore after they just lost again, they felt like they should have won against the Cleveland Browns. They're going to be pissed off. It's going to be cold. Derrick Henry's going to be running downhill. Lamar's going to want to keep playing at this MVP-esque level to, he wants these awards. I know he says he doesn't want the awards, just wants the trophy. Trust me. He likes these awards. This is where, if you're Sean Payton and you're Bo Nix, you want to just shut everyone up. You want to say, hey, Rookie of the Year, Coach of the Year. Because right now Kevin O'Connell is probably, in most people's eyes, the runaway Coach of the Year at the moment. Except if Minnesota falls apart towards the second half of this season because Sam Darnold turns into Sam Darnold, all the good credit and all the good stuff he's earned over these first couple of weeks, that's going to be gone. And if the Rookie of the Year, which is Jaden Daniels right now, but if Jaden struggles against some of these tougher teams and Bo goes in and gets those 2 wins, how many rookie quarterbacks are going to be able to say they beat Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid, and Steve Spagnuolo in Kansas City? Now, I am very well aware these are very hard things to do, and this is not something that is going to be this is not a prediction, this is not a guarantee. I am predicting they win at least one of those games. I firmly believe that. I think Denver's defense is too good to not at least get one of those games. And if I'm being honest, I think the game to get is against Kansas City, and that is because division rivalry, you know those teams better. There's a certain, just division games go different than against a team like the Ravens. They only see every couple of years. So if I had to actually pick one, I do think they win the Kansas City game. And I think that will get Bo his own, that will start to change the narrative. Because, again, there's people who are willing to discuss Drake May being a part of the Rookie of the Year conversation, even though he started later, because they think his overall talent is better. But those same people won't even engage in possibly entertaining Bo Nix for Rookie of the Year. And Sean, we have, again, I told you, last 18 games, the Denver Broncos are 12-6. They are a playoff team. They are a playoff team. So let's not act like these are overwhelming teams just beating up on the poor Denver Broncos. This has been a playoff team the last 17, 18 games. Give them their credit. Give their coach and their quarterback, who are going to be up for awards at the end of this year, give them their credit. Bo Nix up for another Offensive Rookie of the Week, and I see you people on Twitter, Tony specifically, who are spitting and making fun of it, saying, oh my gosh, how can Bo be there? Just because you thought Bo was a bad college quarterback and you didn't think he was going to be a good NFL quarterback does not change the matter of if he performs, you have to give him his credit at some point. And these next two games, and I'll be the guy who spreads it. I'll be the guy who says, hey, if the Denver, like, there's a bunch of super fans. Trust me, there are. And I have no problem being a super fan. I have no problem saying my bias. I don't. I will say my bias to as many people as possible because at least I'm honest about it. At least I am forthcoming about it. At least I'm not trying to hide it from you. But the reality is, the other quarterbacks aren't even going to have, Caleb's closest is Packers, Lions back-to-back. And again, at Baltimore, at Kansas City, if Bo plays well in both games and they split 1-1, I think we're going to totally have a new conversation on him in a couple of weeks. And I believe with all of my heart, the Denver Broncos will be 6-4. Sean Payton will be leading coach of the year, and Bo Nix will be leading Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year conversation. Give it to him. Also, PS2 for Defensive Player of the Year, because have you seen Denver's defense? Have you seen how big of a part it is? I said this with Tony. Denver's defense is a lot of engage 8 and let the corners cover. And these corners are covering, including Surtain, who, of course, who throws at Surtain? Guys like Bryce Young. Moving over to the Pelicans, man, do they have some talent. Man, do they have some talent. I am more and more convinced. Now, it was one of the most gut-wrenching things. Game 1, they look great against the Bulls, and they not only look great because they beat up on a team that they should win, they look great stylistically in the way that they played. The introduction of DeJounte Murray, really playing a point guard, distributing the ball. Even though Zion wasn't there, you saw what he could do with B.I., CJ, Jordan Hawkins, who is now, thankfully, like, all the people that doubted, we can no longer doubt, at some point we have to correct, we can no longer doubt the player development that happens in New Orleans. Zion, from what he was drafted, what he is now, B.I. from when he got there to now, Hawkins year 1 to year 2, Trey Murphy's development, like the New Orleans Pelicans have very, very, very good, and I'd argue great player development. And Hawkins from year 1 to year 2, you can clearly see it. Not only is his shot there, which he's had from college, his ability to the same transition Trey Murphy had to make, where it's that catch, pump fake, take 2 dribbles, establish to the defense that you can go towards the basket. Don't just be a spot-up shooter. The great, great shooters can do more than just be a spot-up shooter. They threaten another form of offense. And Jordan Hawkins, you're seeing that development year 1 to year 2. But then, of course, in very traditional New Orleans fashion, DeJounte Murray fractures his hand after 1 game. Because why wouldn't he? You know, I mean, it's New Orleans fandom. It's just, man, you diehard Saints fans, Pelicans fans, LSU fans. At least you're out the Tigers, kind of. Man, look, there's a lot of stuff that goes on in Louisiana. But the Pelicans, their overall talent, once everybody gets healthy, again, I've argued this for a while now, and I will continue to, they are as good or great as anybody. Also, they're getting contributions already from guys that were unexpected. Yves Messi was supposed to just be a He was supposed to be the Jordan Hawkins of this team, a guy who's not going to play much as a rookie, but then step into his role. But because of the clear lack of size, which they already knew they would have, him being able to step in there as a center and already block shots, play defense, run to the rim, get hustle points, all that stuff already, like his feel for the game is already there. That's not something you have to teach. That's something you have to hope he progresses at. He already has that. Yes, is there going to be some things with his natural strength and conditioning and stuff like that he's got to get better at. He eventually at some point will have to establish some form of offense besides just run and jump. Otherwise, teams will start playing you, especially when Zion and him are on the court. That's going to be unplayable if he doesn't have a single part of his offensive game yet. But Zion has not played well offensively through 3 games, and they're 2-1. And yes, they lost the game in Portland the other night, but honestly, I'm not overly concerned about that. Playing back-to-back against a team, it happens. I'm not really concerned. Again, especially with DeJounte being out. And DeJounte's going to be out for about 4 weeks. Once he comes back, DeJounte Murray, please move CJ McCollum to the bench. DeJounte Murray, Herb Jones, Brandon Ingram, Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, the ability to flex in Messi, Hawkins, Jose Alvarado. The thing I love about the Pelicans rotation is it's not just this, and this I don't think Willie Green gets enough credit for. It's not just this, oh, you play X amount of minutes tonight, you play X amount of minutes tonight. He truly uses his bench as if, YouTube's not going to like this, as if he has a particular thing that requires ammo. And if the energy's low, he brings in Jose and Messi. If they need shooting, he can bring in, they need an offensive spark. They can bring in Trey Murphy, Jordan Hawkins early. It's not this stagnant, oh, this guy's getting X amount of minutes because he makes this much money. This guy's getting X amount of, like, one of the things they're doing in New Orleans that's so cool is, yes, they are paying the guys that produce, but they are also, Willie Green is coaching to the flow of the game, which is, I think, is truly a lost art. And as they get more recognition because they play better and they go farther in the playoffs, you'll start to see this. He is willing to use all these different rotations based on what he feels and what he sees his team needs for that game. Again, you need offense. We have Murphy. We have Hawkins. You need defense or energy. Alvarado, Messi. You need just big bodies rebounding. All right, Theus, you're going to be in the game early. Okay, do we need to put shooting around Zion? Okay, that's when these guys come. Like, he is truly coaching to the flow of the game, and this is the most complete team he has to emphasize that coaching style. He's got 2 7-footers. He's got 2 shooters. He's got 2 hustle guys off the bench, and everybody is still continuing to buy into the defense. I understand it's 2024 NBA, and defense is hard to pull off, but the energy that B.I., who's not a great defender, but he's an energetic defender. Obviously, we know about what Alvarado can do. We know Herb Jones, who's an elite, the best defensive guard in the NBA. Zion, who's made a commitment to not only being in shape, but the way he's playing defense with his energy and his motor. All these guys, what they're able to do, man, they're 2-1. They're about to play the Warriors, who aren't going to have Steph for this week. They're going to go back-to-back with the Warriors. I don't love their scheduling early in the season, but it is what it is. You can't do much about it. They're about to go back-to-back to the Warriors, no Steph. They should win those 2 games, get off to a 4-1 start. I feel good about them. Honestly, talent-wise, I know everyone's talking about OKC because of SGA and Chet and those guys. And yes, OKC beat them, and it looked bad in the playoff series last year. But B.I. looks like he is ready to go. I remember all you motherfuckers who said trade B.I. Zion looks like he's healthy. He's ready to go. This team, I'm genuine. Their talent, they are just as talented as OKC. SGA might be the best player in that series, fine. I think he's a foul merchant, but that's neither here nor there. After you get past SGA, Zion I take over Chet. I take BI over Chet. And then once you start getting into the role players, the Jalen Williams versus the Trey Murphy versus what Jordan Hawkins will look like at that point come the end of the season. These are, in my opinion, OKC and New Orleans are the 2 most talented teams. OKC obviously has had 1 million draft picks. They're going to continue to have 1 million draft picks because, hell, they have the Clippers draft pick, and now Kawhi's not playing. And if I see Cooper Flag in an OKC jersey, I'm going to lose my mind. The Pelicans have just as much talent, in my opinion, as anybody, including Minnesota, including OKC. Maybe Boston and Denver's super high-end talent in terms of their starting 5. The only teams I would say are better. With that being said, this is HardFoul Radio. We'll be back with our closing statements. And we are back to close it out. This is Hard Foul Radio. Just a little check-in real quick. Game. If you're watching it live, Yankees fans doing Yankee fan shit. Fan interference again. This is clear frustration. Again, we talked about earlier in the show, Yankee fans need to step up, bring the energy, do this kind of thing because the players are already going to be stressed. The players already know they're down 3-0. The players don't want to get swept in the World Series. But the Dodgers up 2-0. Freddie Freeman, holy shit, what a run, man. What a just a way. Freddie's one of those few guys that is likable even if you don't like his team. And for everything he's been through this year, what a fantastic way for Freddie Freeman's season to potentially end. Like, he's been on fire. He's going to win World Series MVP. All that stuff is fantastic. Power rankings tomorrow as well. We're going to break down our top 10 teams. We have to remember, before I unveil these, we have to remember and have to get some kind of consistency. We either want power rankings. I hear people say this all the time with not just my own power rankings and power rankings in general. Do we want power rankings to reflect a snapshot in the season? Meaning, do we want the week 3 power rankings for an NFL season just to be the teams that are 2-0, 2-1, 1-1, etc.? Or do we want it to be the teams that we actually believe are the best teams in football if everyone had to play today? And they're always going to get an outlier. This year, the outlier is the Cincinnati Bengals, who probably got and were given and are still given the most credit for what they've done in the past to who they are now. Meaning, even though the record has not been good, they are getting the most credit of still being a good team because this is the same core that went to a Super Bowl. Well, the other team we obviously know was the Kansas City Chiefs, who just haven't been that great and are still getting the benefit because of the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. But at least they are that. They are the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions, and that's worth a lot. And then you get other teams. The other outlier, and you get them both ways, is the Minnesota Vikings, who I think are doing a hell of a job coaching. But again, when you're Sam Darnold as your quarterback, your projection and how great I truly think you can be and how the general public will perceive you, it is limited. So we're always going to have outliers. But we just have to, at some point we have to agree, what are power rankings going to be long term? Are they going to be snapshots or are they going to be who we actually think are good? I'm of the belief it should be who we actually think are good. So I don't just go with record. Again, the team I've struggled the most with this year is the San Francisco 49ers. Obviously, Ayuk's been injured and he really hasn't played very well to begin with, but that team I can't look at and not say that's one of the best 5 or 6 teams in the NFL when they are healthy. Obviously, they need Christian McCaffrey back. Obviously, they need, if Ayuk who was struggling, is not going to be the remainder of the year, they need Jennings to produce because they need another receiver for Brock Purdy. They need Purdy to play well, which he's kind of been 50-50 on if he plays great or not. This is why consistently towards the top of my lists, I've had the Bills, especially now with Amari Cooper. I've had the Ravens, especially when, they give the ball to Derrick Henry more than 11 times. The Chiefs I have kept up there towards that top part, even though I do think this is the worst version of the Chiefs we've had. And the Lions, who have just dominated people. Again, the Lions scored 52 points and their quarterback threw for 85 yards. I didn't even think that was fucking possible in 2024. So, excited for that. That's Power Rankings tomorrow. And then we come back Sunday before the games. I appreciate everybody, as always, for checking in. This is Hard Foul Radio, the show that values time and puts God first. I will see you.